Hey guys, I'm gonna do a analysis of my most recent game, and I'm not gonna pretend like I know everything. Um, I know just enough to get by and get the victory at this level. So I'm gonna share with you my strategy. He starts with d4, and I play knight f6, and that's to prevent e4 giving him a good center. So now he has to do something else. He goes with this, and now I can play e6 and play the Nimzo or something, but I choose to go symmetrical with him just to let him make the first move. And he makes this move, which is threatening to develop his bishop. And here I decided I would just bring my knight out. Sometimes aggressively I play c5, um, but this is not a Sicilian defense because he went with the queen's pawn. But a lot of the times I play c5, and if he takes, then I can try to win that back with the queen and the bishop. But it's, I mean, I could immediately win it with queen a5 check. But anyway, I decided to just get my knight out instead, and I'm kind of just like saying, okay, I have two knights out, you only have one. So, and I want his bishop to come out here because then I'm prepared to attack it. And if he takes my knight, I welcome that exchange because I want to have the bishop pair. That's my go-to strategy to win. Now he develops it here instead, so I can't attack it with pawns. And in this position, he has good control over e5. I would like to play e5 myself because in this game I chose not to go with e6 and develop normally. I'm trying to prepare e5, and here I play g3 or g6 with the idea of bishop g7 to prepare in the future. I'm going to save time by never playing e6 and then playing e5 in one move. That will save me time, hopefully. Now he plays this, and instead of developing his knight out, which means that my pawn here is not as vulnerable, and also here I just develop, and this position by him is kind of passive for white. He could have played like pawn all the way out, for example, but he chooses this strategy, and he develops his knight here because he can't develop his knight here because his pawn is in the way. So then I castle, and I mean, in this position, I have no problems. Basically, my strategy here is survive the opening and just don't make any blunders and take your time. It's a long classical game, which means 30 minutes each side. And I wonder if I can analyze without the computer on, just so it's not distracting. But in the analysis mode, it shows you how much time I have. So we both have used like a minute. We've both castled. Now it's my turn. And here, this is a big moment of the game. Computer likes e5 here. And even though I only attack it once or defend it once, and he has two defenders, so he's outnumbering me on e5, I can play it anyway, because if I did play it and he took, I have this move, which is now all of a sudden my bishop's attacking the pawn, my knight's attacking the pawn, and my other knight's attacking the pawn. So there's really no way for him to save this. So even though I'm giving up the pawn, I successfully am playing that move. However, in the game itself, I was having trouble calculating that. It's easier looking back on it, but at the time I was like, well, for example, if I was worried about this, what if he plays knight takes, and then if I take and he takes, I can't really play this move because I was thinking he could play this move. and this move would defend this point with a pawn, and I didn't see into the future that I could have played here, forking the queen and rook, so he doesn't have that move. So that was where I stopped calculating, and then I decided to go backwards. And I like this move too because it's not the best, but I'm planning on rerouting it to d6 because the knight doesn't need to defend this pawn because his knight isn't attacking it. Also, the queen doesn't need to defend this pawn because his knight isn't attacking it. Therefore, I can play knight to here and then knight to here. So my pawn does a good job of supporting my position, and it's not a liability. If a pawn ever attacks it, I can just take. And from back here, the knight's threatening to redevelop here, where it can hop in here and here, or here, or here. It's just kind of good there. And most importantly, it lets my bishop see this square. So this was kind of my thought of preparing e5 was if I put my knight here, then I can play e5. The bishop will immediately support it. So I won't run into... But it was all flawed because I thought that he could play f4, but he can't. But anyway, he lashes out here, and this is one of the drawbacks of his position. Why did he play e6 if he's also going to spend another tempo doing this? I don't know. Anyway, I just take because I didn't like this pawn here because I had no defenders for it, and I'm planning on putting my knight here. So I'm glad to get rid of it. And then now I just bring my knight out. And I'm not threatening to take because just bishop takes, but my knight's just good here. It's defended by 3 different pieces. It has tension. He only has 1 defender. So if a bunch of things start happening, sometimes I can take him. And if I can never really be taken in a disadvantageous way because I can just take back with the pawn. So here, he decides to put more pressure on this exchange. So now if I play a move like pawn up, suddenly taking and taking prevents my queen from taking, and if I take with the pawn, it's potentially only defended by the queen, which isn't ideal. So this is where I start to kind of fall apart a little bit. My bishop is good on this diagonal, but I decided to redeploy it this way for long-term attack on the king, because if I just play the natural move and develop it, pinning the knight and attacking the queen, the problem with that move is the knight isn't defending this pawn. This pawn is defending this pawn. So normally you would pin the knight and then your knight threatens to hop in. But in this situation, this point is so well defended by his pawn chain that pinning the knight is useless. And he's just going to play h3, get a flight square for the king, and then I have to either take the knight and develop his queen and lose my bishop pair, or retreat, and all I've done is it's his turn, and now I've given him a flight square, and my bishop is, somewhere. So instead I decide to go this way. Now the danger of this move is my knight is just completely hanging here. So any bishop move or queen move I have to react to. Also, when he plays this move, I know what he's doing. Excuse me. I know what he's doing here. He's going for bishop h6, and he's trying to do what's called the Yugoslav attack, where I have a King's Indian defense, and his idea of undermining it is queen and bishop team up, bishop comes to h6, forces an exchange, because if I don't, then he'll take me, and if I take him, he'll take me with the queen and then play knight up here and try to checkmate me. And if I move the bishop, then he'll win my rook. So to stop this attack, I slide the rook to the side, and now I'm very vulnerable to a bishop pin because the knight can't move, because then the rook would be lost. So here, he decides to take. I'm not sure why. I can't take back with the queen, and I could take back with the pawn and activate the rook, but then he would just bring his rook in, and I don't like that position, so instead I just play pawn to here. And now my queen can come out here and defend the knight if it's pinned. Now, here's another thing. In this position, he's kind of better here just because of he has a pawn push that attacks my knight at any moment, and my knight has nowhere good to go because the square that it would want to go is defended twice. That's why this bishop is good here, and his pawn push is a good thing. So he uses it now, and I knew this was coming, and my plan was I was thinking maybe knight out here and then back or something, but I was like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna go back. And this is a veteran move because it's losing. Like a supercomputer would be like, oh, your knight's undeveloped, this is bad, or even a human would say that. Maybe not a computer, but the truth is, I'm just gonna bring the knight back to d7, and then my knight can go to c5 or e5, and from d7 it's really good there, and I can play bishop to here. So you can make a knight move backwards as long as you know you have no weaknesses. So my knight doesn't need to do anything other than take a couple turns to redeploy. So he goes in for the attack now, but again, I'm like one step ahead of him, so I just back the bishop up. Now, I'm so used to backing the bishop up, I forgot to consider other moves. Like, I could play bishop f6 and keep my bishop in the game. Avoid the exchange, but also keep him in the game. Because from h8, he's really out of the game. But you'll see it works out fine anyways. So, okay, so now he comes in, and this is where he's really looking good as white. I mean, he's got both bishops, he's got rooks connected, castled, a knight protecting the king and ready to attack. His next move is knight to g4, threatening checkmate here. And I know that's his next move, so um, well, maybe I didn't know that yet. And again, it's not deadly. I always have like f6 or whatever. Problem is, then his knight would hop in here, and I would have to exchange my bishop for it. He would get a pawn in here and cramp my position. And anyway, here I play the immediate knight d7 to prevent the knight hopping here, which would ruin my position. Now, if knight hops in here, I would play knight f6 and block the queen from coordinating with the knight. And then the knight is just kind of stupid here because he can't go here because this pawn didn't block. It was the knight that blocks. And my knight, from doing nothing, comes in by anticipation, knowing what he's going to do after this queen move. I hop the knight over here, and I'm in time to stop it. So then he pins the knight, finally. And this is a great move by him because now when he plays knight here, I don't have the luxury of knight blocks because then he takes my rook. And in this position, I'm immediately considering I'm in trouble, do it anyways. And if he takes the rook, then play queen takes bishop, and I'll lose the exchange, but I'll have both bishops and he'll only have one. And although he'll have rooks, they're in the back not doing anything yet, and I need to deal with his problem. Also, his knight, if it ever ends up in here, is too strong. So I was definitely considering the sacrifice, but instead I thought it's fine. I can just play bishop to here. And the reason is because when he plays knight to here, he forgot that although there's all this pressure on f7, I have bishop takes pawn. So this developing bishop move, he kind of forgot to defend this pawn. So once he pushed it and attacked my knight, and I just kind of retreated everything, kept all my pieces on the board, he just kind of neglected to defend this. And then I take a pawn, win a pawn with a development of a piece with the defense of my checkmate. it would have been checkmate. So this is defending checkmate. This is when I thought I was winning. I thought he had missed this and I thought I was winning. Computer says it's +3 for white because of rook attacking the bishop, and I think it's just to threaten to take it. Even if I were to defend it, it just wants to take the bishop wherever it is and then checkmate me. He knows the same thing, which is I need to get rid of this bishop. It's the only thing preventing checkmate. So he immediately attacks me with a pawn, which is a problem. But even though my bishop has to move, and if it moves here, the knight can always take it, and then that creates a weakness around my king. I don't have the luxury of bishop back because then again, checkmate. So here I play the best move, which is ignore the threat. You do have to move this bishop, but not yet because I have bishop. I also have pawn attacking queen, but I chose bishop attacking queen because now my bishop, who was back here, has been redeployed. The queen is under attack. Now if you take my other bishop, my bishop takes queen and I'm winning. And the queen has nowhere to go because the bishop is controlling this square, the bishop is controlling this square, the pawns and the knights are controlling this square. So the queen can no longer coordinate with the knight, and now the knight is stupid, and the bishop is also stupid, and the queen has to move. Now queen moves here, which is a really good move again because now double attack on my knight, and if I move the knight, it's pinned, so he can win the rook. However, I move the knight anyways because, again, if I try to defend the knight with my bishop, because my bishop is under attack, so if I try to defend both pieces by moving one to defend the other, if I play bishop here, he'll just play knight takes. And then when I play pawn takes, he plays queen takes, and that's going to be game over because his queen's just in my position, and this pawn never advances, and just winning a pawn and really bad. But here, I play attacking the queen again. And so now all my pieces are getting in the game, and he has to move again, and he moves all the way back. And now in this position, I'm in another predicament because although I unpinned with a tempo, I still have nowhere to put the rook and no way to block this bishop without walking into a pin again. So here, like for example, if I move the rook, he takes it with this bishop, and if I keep it there, he takes it with that bishop. And here, I choose to save my bishop with the understanding that I'm giving him this rook, but then I can take with queen, and in this position, black is winning because I have a pawn and a bishop for the rook. Pawn and bishop is 4 points, 3 points for the bishop, 1 point for the pawn, but this bishop is a monster, and this bishop is terrible. This bishop has no moves. It can't go anywhere. This bishop has a lot of squares it's controlling. It's hitting the king. It has no opposition. There's no light squared bishop for white to ever attack, combat this laser beam sniper at the king. And this is a monster piece. Also, queen's ready to come out and checkmate with a double attack on this pawn with the queen on the light square as well. So I have light square domination. And here, black is winning, but it's still dangerous because if it goes into an endgame, he has more rooks than me. And also, his pawn is under attack, so he defends it. Now, in this position, I play the forcing move, threaten checkmate. And then he plays queen blocks the checkmate, which is a problem because if I take, he would take back, and then let's say I take again, and then pawn takes. I would lose that endgame because he would have 2 rooks and a bishop versus my 2 bishops and a rook and a pawn. But maybe I wouldn't lose, but it's not as good. So I back up now, and now the I would have liked to take that pawn, but then he would have just taken my bishop. That's why it was a good move. But now I have attacked his queen and king with my bishop, and it's defended, and I'm hitting this once the queen moves. So now the queen goes here to protect this pawn and get out of the attack. But the queen has forgotten its primary responsibility, which is this diagonal. And now the game's basically over because I can play a killer move here, which is, well, there's multiple killer moves here, but the basic idea is in all variations is knight here, because I couldn't play this move before because the queen was hanging out on this diagonal. But once he gets off of it, now I'm hitting the bishop. The bishop has no moves. It's gonna be killed no matter what. Also, the knight and the bishop are attacking the king, so there's nothing he can do. So he plays attack my bishop, which is um, um, it's basically trying to complicate things because he knows he's lost. If I bring the bishop, if I just go for his bishop now, he takes my bishop, and then we're even. And now he's also defending his king against the threat with bishop takes pawn. So now I take, I use this opportunity to say check, because I noticed there's no way for him to block the check. He has to run away. If he plays queen here, I take it. If he plays queen here, I take it. And if he plays rook here, I take it with check. So he has to move. And now I have a fork on the king and the queen. If I play check, just to show you, if he were to go here, I have this crazy move, which is a double check. The king is in check by the knight, so and you can't kill the knight because it's also a discovered attack by the queen. So there's only one move, which is king to here, and then I would play queen to here, which is checkmate threatened. So there's only one defense. You can't take with the king because the knight defends, and if you take with the rook, then I would play checkmate here, which wins the queen and the king at the same time. But it's literally checkmate. There's nothing, you can't take the knight and you can't save the king. So that's how that would end if he doesn't take. So I'm sitting here for, okay, so I have 19 minutes on the clock, and then when I make this move, I have 11 minutes. So it took me like 8 minutes I thought about this for 8 minutes because, and another thing is I could have played bishop takes here, and if king out, then check and win the bishop. Sacrifice my bishop for the pawn and the bishop. But I liked this better because here I can just get the bishop. I could have played bishop out of there to h8 and then followed it up with knight takes bishop. But I didn't like his knight sacrifice here. And then if I take it, his rook is active and he would push the pawn and try to checkmate me with using the bishop's help. So instead I decide for the check and the fork, and then also just bishop back in this position is good because I'm still threatening to win the bishop and there's nothing he can do about it. But I was just having trouble calculating all his desperate attacks that he had. So instead I just went for this because I know that when I take this rook, it comes with checkmate threatened. So I could calculate that he has to play a queen move. What I didn't like was his knight move. If he plays knight to e5, I don't like that move because if I take with the bishop, he takes with the queen, and then he's attacking my rook. And if I don't, he's attacking my queen and stopping the checkmate. But he played this, luckily for me. And then here I'm thinking, do I take the pawn and just try to win the endgame? Take the pawn and then if he take with the bishop. But that doesn't really work because if I did that, he would play this move, which if I take, he wins this bishop. And if I don't take, if I take over here, he gets away with the check. So that's not actually winning a pawn there. So I play the best move, queen to c2, attacking the rook and still threatening checkmate if the queen moves. Like if the queen came back to defend the rook, that would be mate. Okay, so now rook leaves. The rook can't really go anywhere else. It could have gone here or here. Again, there's problems if he tries to burrow himself in. So rook to here it makes sense. He's trying to attack my king. But now I just also my bishop is under attack here. My queen's under attack. But by attacking the rook with checkmate threatened, he has to move the rook. He can't kill my bishop. Now I move the bishop. I'm taking a pawn, but it's not about the pawn. It's just about saving my bishop's life and also the pawn a little bit for the endgame. Now, I'm not sure. He should play. I think he was worried about getting mated and trying to get all the pieces he could into this. But I think he should play F5 here to get his rook active. Because I can't take with the queen because the rook takes queen, and I can't take with the pawn because then a knight move, and then I'm checked by the queen. So that's dangerous. So instead he goes for this, and then I'm winning a pawn, but this isn't about pawns, guys. This is about a threat on the rook. I wouldn't have taken this pawn unless there was a threat on the rook. He thinks I'm just pawn hunting, so then he attacks again, and then it's really game over because I take the rook and he resigns. So, just to show what the computer thinks, it likes c5. Again, here's where it thinks I'm winning or equalizing with this move. It thinks this works. Yeah, so that's how I could have played e4, but instead I chickened out, went back with the knight. It thinks white's winning here. It likes his push there. Then I take, and then I play here. And then, see, I knew this wasn't a very good move. But in this position, just rook here to prevent his Yugoslav attack. Now he takes here. Interesting, it liked giving the rook some room. Here, it likes going there, but then it exchange. I have an awkward pawn there. So instead I went back. Plus, I always win these games where I just put my pieces all the way back and then sneakily redeploy them. Like, it almost always works at this level. So then here I'm getting crushed. But so he should have brought his knight in first before the queen, because when he brought the queen, I had time with the knight, I guess. And then I wonder if they wanted to sacrifice. Like if I went here, did he want to do this? No, that doesn't work. But I guess he would have played, instead of queen there, computer likes to just shove this pawn down my face. Okay. So he takes the queen route, and then here, this is the craziest part, is it thinks that this is a bad move by black. But again, it's kind of the same position. Oh, I see. If I save the bishop to here, he traps my bishop. Okay. Alright, whatever. So he attacks me with the pawn. And then that gives me the opportunity to attack his queen a couple times. And then he goes, like, computer doesn't even take the rook. It's so funny. But now, in a practical game between people, it's just too much. The bishop pair is just, people underestimate it. So see, this is his moment where queen needs to stay on this diagonal, preventing the knight move, which kills this bishop. And instead he goes here, and then, yes, I saw this move. He didn't play it, but he should play queen here, which defends the bishop and defends the king at the same time. But I would still take, right? Well, then my knight's hanging. But what if I took with the knight? Oh, well, I guess I don't have the luxury of taking there because my knight is so fragile. But here I just check, and then it liked bishop back. And then what I was thinking is, what if he tries this move? And I take. Yeah, I guess it's not much of a problem. But anyway, I just went for, they're both winning. It's one of the hard things to calculate. I went for the fork because I knew the queen coming in with the checkmate threat was too good. I also just didn't want to calculate anymore. And I wanted to go for the king, because if I just tried to win that bishop, it wouldn't have been enough. But it was telling me I could do both. But here I found the best move. And then here you just take. And then here you just take. And now he has to move the rook, but instead he forgets. And then it's just resignation. So, let's see if I'm still ranked. I'm ranked in the top 1,500 in the world. All right. So, thank you.